Dennison was there, and so he's been involved with. So to have the number of people in that, like especially with our offensive line, so like John Benton, Rick Dennison, Clint's focus on running the football. And Justin Outen, played center and was a tight end run game guy for the Packers too. So, it's fun. It's good. It's a really cool group, and it's cool to kind of have things settled too. Because last year, through our off-season process, we were late with our hire, and then Mike, was hiring a staff and kind of getting people together like throughout the free agents or the draft meetings. So this year to have, be able to keep, talking the same language, having the position coaches come in and present to us now, before we start each position, like, hey, this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for. It's really helped. It's just like like we're constantly talking about that holistic approach of, acquisition, sports science, player development, like just bringing that whole thing together. And obviously, the coaching is the number one priority, especially on that side of the ball, the way we finish the season.
You mentioned
I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
The NFL world is giving up on a quarterback. How do you know you need to go?
When the NFL world is giving up on quarterbacks?
Yeah.
I don't think they're giving up on quarterbacks.
No, just in terms of quarterbacks specifically, like just like a second chance kind of guy.
Yeah.
How do you know the evaluation?
The evaluation is just all you can, just the football knowledge, the confidence, the person spending time with, our connections to other coaches around the National Football League, players that have played with the individual, coaches that have coached the player. It's hard, without, when NFL Europe was around, it was awesome. Those guys had an opportunity to go play in the spring. And so there was just better development at that time for more seasoned quarterbacks.
John, you mentioned identity a minute ago. What do you want the identity to be of your team in general?
We want to be a smart, tough, physical, fast football team. And, we want to be able to walk, we want to be able to get our home field advantage back and win multiple championships for our fans.
7 or 8 years ago, it was a big deal when a college player opted out of a bowl game. Now that doesn't seem to be a big deal. But some are opting out of regular season games, whether it's health-related or not. How do you evaluate a player that maybe decides to stop playing in the middle of November or even at halftime of the game in order to train for the draft?
They're all evaluated on an individual basis, so every circumstance is different. It depends on, what's going on with the player at the school, where he is medically, but it's just part of all part of the evaluation process. It's not good or bad. Yeah.
As a young kid, would you have ever imagined that, and what does that mean to you?
Good to see you, Lance. It means a lot, actually, growing up in Green Bay, and that's why I have that affinity for, every day, the fans. I always wanted to know that the guys over at the Packers facility were doing whatever they could to win football games, and it was such a big deal. I know how much it meant to me. So, and I know a lot of the people, working for the Packers and how much time and energy they've put into this. So I just think it's going to be awesome for the guys to be able to, I just hope it's not snowing. Because remember the year we drafted Javon Walker, we got there was 3 feet of snow, and he had never even seen snow before, so some of these guys might be freaked out if there's a big snowstorm. But no, really excited for everybody at the Packers, and just it's going to be a fun atmosphere.
John, you and Pete built something from the ground up years ago. Now that he's looking to do that with the Raiders, what do the Raiders have to look forward to in his approach and how he does what he does?
Competing in every aspect of building a football team, every day. You're talking about Pete, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And his ability to instill confidence in people is second to none. And the energy. It's going to be, it's a culture shift. I'm not exactly sure what it was in the past, but I know what's coming in.
What did you learn from him?
From Pete? We don't have enough time for that, but we did a lot of awesome stuff together, and I think, those 2 years starting out 7 and 9, there's a lot of things we had to work through, and we overcame it. We sustained it. That's his positive approach is amazing. I always tell people I think his best coaching job was the year we lost, the year after we lost the Super Bowl. And he was unbelievable that year.
John, it's clear that you emphasize the running game with the hires for the offensive coaches, but just how high of a priority was that for you? And do you think the NFL is trying to know the running game being more important for offensive?
Yeah, it feels like it, right? But your ability to run the ball and condense the game and be able to stretch the field, throw the ball over the top, I don't think that's ever changed. You do see just from a technique standpoint, you do see like the tackling not being great, especially in college football, and that's something that you want to be able to have the identity to play wherever you're going to play in Detroit, you're going to play at home, you're going to play in Philly. We want to be able to run the ball wherever you are, wherever you're going to play, and that having that physical run game just gets the defense rocking too.
John, some GMs have talked about wanting to hit on 75% of their picks, or they have some measures of success. How do you measure success for the personnel department year in, year out?
Every year there's a constant evaluation of, okay, how do we acquire the player? What all went into the decisions? So measuring it is like every year, like how do we change our process? Like if we emphasize enough in one area or another, how have we managed our cap? That's usually a pretty big project after the draft, right? Where you're talking about, okay, we've spent more money on this side of the ball than this side of the ball, because this is cash and cap. You got to rob from Peter to pay Paul. So you got to make those decisions, and then, okay, how did we do it? Like, what was our process? What was the decision-making process? And we're constantly adapting and trying to figure that out as we go. It's not like there's just one way to do things. You have to be super pliable.
Is there a certain update on where things stand with the team?
Where things stand? I'm not sure. He's on our team. Yeah, he's a big, strong, fast, physical receiver.
Hey John, you talked about collaborating with Mike and what type of players he wanted last year.
Yeah.
As you go through that process again on the offensive side of the ball, any lessons you learn or any kind of shortcuts you could take as far as that collaboration process goes?
Well, there's just a little bit of more clarity there, right? Because you've seen the system. We saw it with the Vikings. We saw it in Denver, and then what they just went through in New Orleans. I mean, they started out really strong. They got real beat up, especially in the offensive line. But Clint did a great job. And they were really, he's just got this really cool calmness about him, and he's been around the league enough, especially with his father, to understand what the free agency process looks like, what the draft process looks like, team building, being pliable. He's been around it. So I would say the experience. Yeah. Last year was like everybody was just coming together. We're kind of learning each other's names. Okay, what do you like? We go through. We went. There's a level of like I said, speaking the same language. So we had signed some guys in free agency that, solid players, but weren't necessarily a good fit. So it's like, all right, we got to adjust on the fly. Let's not wait. Let's make decisions. And Mike's great that way. Mike's really, really, well, you guys know, you guys talk to him every day, but really smart, clear communicator.
When you evaluate the players who played late in the college football season in the playoff, the last two rounds, it's later than ever before.
Yeah.
When they come here, and maybe they haven't trained the way others have, or there are times they suffer their wingspan. How do you evaluate them? Do you evaluate them differently, or you go more on the tape as opposed to less on the stopwatch?
No, again, you're evaluating everybody individually. So, how late have they played? What kind of injuries do they have? What do the analytics people think? What do our sports science people think? What do the coaches? How do the coaches value that? Value the player? What's the fit? So, it doesn't necessarily. There's a. If you're talking about height, weight, speed, is that kind of what you're getting at? And how does that? Yeah, we're actually more interested in the person and the competitor, what kind of football player they are, more than the GPS times or the height, weight, speed, what they're doing here. This is really, for us, yeah, we're evaluating these guys in the workout, but it's more about the football, their tape. What does their tape tell us? And then, getting to know the person a little bit more here. And the biggest thing is the medical.
Going off that, there are obviously certain measurables.
Besides free agency in the draft, and
there are obviously certain measurables historically have kind of proven true at certain positions, desirable measurables and things. Speaking broadly at receiver, what does a receiver who's maybe under 180, maybe even under 160 pounds have to do to prove durability in this league?
Yeah, well, we talk about compensating factors, right? So what kind of compensating factors does the player have? Whether that's if you're talking about durability in general, that's how they take care of themselves, work ethic. You know, what do the trainers at the school say? What do the strength conditioning guys say? How they evaluate the individual. So there always has to be some sort of, if you're undersized, you know, like you have to figure things out. Like I had to figure out how to like pass block, right? I mean, I'm a little guy, right? What do I do? You could cut back then, so it's like, all right, like I'm gonna be cutting. I better be really good at that, otherwise I'm gonna get trucked, which I did a lot.
John, when you look at
Run over. Sorry.
when you look at Ohio State receivers,
Not that that's affected me over the years. Or stayed with me.
when you look at Ohio State receivers as they enter the draft, what about them stands out in their development and what Brian Hartline is doing in Columbus that kind of sets them apart from other guys? Because every year there's a first-round receiver coming out of Columbus.
Yeah, he's a great teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about acquisition and development, right? I mean, they're getting the best receivers. You know, I was just in Dallas a couple weeks ago, and his father came up to me, and his son might go to Ohio State, and he was telling me about the recruiting process. And they're just, I mean, they're obviously very good evaluators, and then he's such a great teacher. You know, played the game, knows what it takes. There's a mentality approach that they have. You know, they just have that receiver kind of swag about them, and it feels like they come into the league like ready to go.
Where does that show up? Like, where do you see them, you know, maybe be more ready to go at this point?
All aspects.
Yeah.
Like their approach off the field, you know, the study habits, how they take care of themselves, whether they're in the facility or away from the facility. You know, the route running, the precision of like being a precise route runner. You know, working with the quarterbacks, having an understanding of feel for, you know, how I run routes for this quarterback or that quarterback. It's a great question because they do seem like they're ahead of the game, and yeah, I would attribute that to Hartline for sure.
John, you talk about
He was a fun player too, like really good special teams player. So he had this like natural toughness about him, you know, like really gritty, really good route runner himself, really good hands, worked his tail off. So.
What have you learned, John? What have you learned about Mike Macdonald you didn't know when you hired him, football-wise? You didn't know when you hired him?
Well, there was a lot. I mean, he was extremely impressive in the interview, obviously. But then, you know, speaking to everybody else, like that's interacted with him and worked with him over the years, all the background information was spot on. And then actually, he's like it's even more impressive. Like the more time you spend with him, and yeah. So I would say just the teaching, there's a really cool clarity about his teaching. And I'm not sure what he would tell you, but you know, he was coach at freshman high school when he was in college. He just has a really, really cool way about him in terms of being in front of the room.
John, in your experience, at what point in this process do the trade markets for the top guys start to solidify? Like, when can you take seriously offers that you're hearing for first-round draft picks, that sort of thing?
Great question. There's kind of a baseline that we start this week. You know, we're meeting with, you know, every agency you can meet with, and then every team, and every kind of tries to get a little bit of a little lay of the land. So it starts. I think a lot of that gets really, really serious about maybe 3 weeks out, 3 weeks out, because like at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we got to make a decision here. Like let's roll. So, but up there, you know, when we picked Spoon a couple years ago, it was like people were talking, but you don't necessarily know like what's real, what's not real. You know what I mean?
Hey, John, there's 3 weeks out, you mean from now or from the draft?
Before the draft, sorry.
There have been some teams that have said in the past that they will take mock drafts and aggregate after analytics department.
Yeah.
Just for another kind of piece of it. Is that something y'all have done? Kind of what?
Yeah. We have a guy, Patrick Ward, who's an incredible guy, really talented. He works with Becca. Then they put together a really cool. Like they're constantly doing it, so it's everything. It's every mock draft you could think of. You know, shoot, now it's like what Vegas thinks. You know what I mean? Like anything you can put in a pile to evaluate, they're on it. Yeah.
Does it help kind of establish or sort of confirm the tiers that you guys kind of think were parts of the draft are going to break?
Yes, to a certain extent, because it's constantly changing. Like I don't know how they do it, to be honest with you. But they're constantly one day a guy's a 5th round pick, next day he's a 3rd round pick. but it's just another tool for us to try to recognize how to navigate the draft on draft weekend, like how to maneuver.
Over the course of your career, have you seen quarterbacks get more comfortable expressing their opinions about roster decisions? And what value does that add to a GM when you quarterback?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if it's like increased over the years. I mean, Brett Favre always wanted Randy Moss. Would talk to me. Like, are we going to get Randy Moss? But no, I think it's always. I mean, obviously it helps, right? If the quarterback like really has a relationship with a receiver that he throws with in the offseason or something like that, or he played with at college, and you just have it's just another part of our tool in the acquisition process.
The running back free agent market has been somewhat depressed over the last couple of years. I understand that Saquon and Derrick Henry are generational talents, but how much does maybe their success and the trend of offenses running the ball more in general maybe dictate or increase the running back free agent market this year and going forward?
Oh, I think it'll affect it a little bit. As the free agencies, it's a solid group in free agency, but it's a rare year with running backs. I mean, it's in the draft. I can't remember this number of like legit prospects at the running back position in the draft. And I usually don't talk about like depth in the draft, but it's sticking out this year. It's rare.
Yes, and there's some that are mocked to go in the first round. It's been somewhat controversial to draft a running back in the first round. The fact that there are some that are being mocked that high, does that speak to the talent level in this class or the way that offenses are trending in the league?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I apologize.
Is this...
Like, I know you're not supposed to take running backs in the first round.
Right.
I think Detroit and Atlanta would.
Right, exactly.
Those guys do pretty good.
It's a hot button topic, but the fact that there are more that are being talked about, is it because this class is so talented? The prospects are so talented?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's because of the talent at the position.
John, we're at the combine where we measure all these aspects of players.
Yes.
If you were to have a combine for scouts, what attributes would you be looking to measure to make a great scout?
Ooh, cool. Their relationships, their people skills, communication skills, ability to have relationships with, like, I would always hit the equipment guys when I went there to like figure out what kind of person the guy is. Like, we've really challenged the guys over the last like 3 years about like who is the person, who's the competitor. So, and really focused on those grades, and then the talent kind of, that's kind of the easier thing to do, is to evaluate the talent level. But really, who is the person, and what are we going to get when, you're in tough times, right? So I would say the knowing different positions and all that, like that's big. Like Hutch does it for us. Steve Hutchinson does it on the offensive line. Just goes out and just does one position for us. But the rest of the scouts have to evaluate like every position. We don't just scout one position. So just like building relationships. I mean, the football knowledge stuff, it's got to be a given, We have a bunch of really cool young guys that are kicking butt right now. The interns we just hired full time, and it's just really cool to see their approach of trying to reach out, trying to establish these relationships with guys, and they want to show you that, hey, I know this guy here and I know that guy there, and I'll talk to this person, I coach with that guy, and so it's pretty cool.
John, when it comes to rules proposals or even the structural changes in the league that might be voted on, those conversations start here.
They started this morning. We were going through all that stuff.
There you go. So, how much, I wonder, in your experience, how much conversation happens behind the scenes to try to get people to yes in terms of other teams or just whatever, you see which one to vote?
I think there's one-offs, right? So there's different phone calls, and I mean, you want to have all the information so you can make the best decision. And so if we're talking about like last year the hip drop, right? So I would rely on John Lynch, who's a friend of mine, to what's this going to look like? How are we going to officiate it? So there's one-offs like that, but the league does a really good job of presenting everything. Here's all the information. This is what's coming. So basically this morning they're kind of laying out the groundwork for what could be coming when we get to the owners meeting I mean, that's right around the corner too.
What triggered that emphasis on who is the person? What triggered that 3 years ago?
Just part of our evaluation process, like going back, our self-evaluation, just, why are we missing, right? What's off right now? Like, you're just constantly looking for your blind spots and trying to figure out how to compensate for them.
We're now 3 years past the transfer process.
Yeah.
How are you seeing that impact the way that you guys handle your business with scouting and preparing for drafts in year 2, say before the portal, especially since again it seems like it's changing by day. There's
Right.
differences there.
Yeah, we have to adapt. We have to keep trying to understand who the person is, how they're out, why are they jumping in the transfer portal? Sometimes it's a reflection on character. Sometimes it's just a reflection on depth at a school, at a position. I want to go play somewhere else. Sometimes, the guy that recruited him's left is at a different school. So it's every individual. What is their particular situation, and to put that in the evaluation computer and try to figure it all out. But the NIL stuff has helped, I think. I mean, I'm glad the guys are getting paid, and it's also a way for us to, evaluate how much they love the game, how they're going to handle themselves professionally. There's guys that, have, 2 and 3 cars right now. Guys making $6 million, and some guys making, 30,000, right? So it's another part of the information to put in the evaluation bucket for the draft in particular.
Do you see more professional?
Last question.
Do you see, sorry?
More professional readiness from players is maybe a positive from that.
Sometimes it depends on the person. How do they handle themselves off the field? Sorry, can you?
Howie Rose, you guys do temporary. You and Howie Rose temporary came in around the same time.
Okay.
Obviously, you've been issued before having won a Super Bowl. Everyone kind of looked into you, what you have done. What has he done to evolve, being a GM, and still being successful?
Howie in particular, I think, does a really good job of that evaluation process, is recognizing what the deficiencies are, right? So they wanted to fix their defense. They went out and hired Vic Fangio. He's a tell the truth guy. So he's always going to understand what needs to be fixed and work on it as quickly as he can.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.